Coaching at UWC ISAK Japan. When we are looking to create meaningful changes in our life to get unstuck or to move forward, one of the things that helps greatly is having support in our life. A coach is someone who can support you. A coach can be anyone, a friend, a family member, or a colleague who is invested in your growth. A coach is there to help you get unstuck and is also there to keep you accountable for your actions that you commit to. In this presentation, I'll be sharing with you a format for a coaching conversation that you can use as you coach a friend, a colleague, or a student, or as you're getting coached. Being supported by a good coaching relationship will greatly increase the likelihood that you are able to commit to making changes that you wish to see in your life. Now, this presentation will be a pretty long one, so if you don't have one yet, please get yourself a nice cup of tea or coffee and find somewhere comfortable to sit at. I am known to have a calming voice, so if you find yourself nodding off, then feel free to pause every now and then to stretch. So, what is coaching? Coaching in a nutshell is supporting a student or a colleague who is stuck to develop awareness for a situation they're experiencing and to take purposeful actions based on what's important and needed. It's to help someone to move from awareness to action. Now, while as faculty and staff, we have different preferences for how or to what extent we step in to support our students, we want to encourage coaching to be used as a default model for how we support our students in our school. This is because the practice of coaching is tightly linked with developing leadership skills in our community members. At UWC ISAK Japan, leadership is a practice of creating positive change by identifying what is important and needed, taking purposeful actions in the face of discomfort, using diversity as a strength, and supporting others in this practice. So here I'm going to elaborate further how coaching can nurture the various leadership skills. And on the left, you can see the leadership practice at UWC ISAK Japan. So coaching is a practice to focus on our purpose in terms of what's important and needed in the face of uncertainty. When we face uncertainty, sometimes we can be driven by our survival brain and react by doing what's easy or comfortable, but may not be aligned with what's important. Coaching helps to shift our focus to our purpose, even if it is uncomfortable. This allows us to practice identifying what's important and needed and take purposeful actions in the face of discomfort. Coaching is a practice to seek opportunities even when circumstances are challenging. Coaching as a support mechanism helps to shift someone from survival mode to growth mode when we're stuck. Being in growth mode helps us to connect with opportunities to move forward intentionally, which in turn helps one to take purposeful actions in the face of discomfort. And coaching is a practice to understand that we have a choice and to take responsibility for actions for positive change. In coaching, a coach does not prescribe a coachee with solutions to follow. Rather, the coachee comes up with possible solutions and commits to an action of their choice. This again helps them take purposeful actions in the face of discomfort and take ownership of their own actions rather than simply following what others have told them to do. And finally, coaching is a practice that builds empathy and compassion amongst the community members. A coach's role is to listen deeply and understand what their coachee is experiencing and to provide support for them to take actions based on what's important and needed. This helps to build empathy and compassion, which in turn cultivates the practice of supporting each other in the practice of leadership. Coaching is most effective when a student or a colleague requests for your support or when you notice someone stuck and offer them a coaching session. Coaching is also built in as part of our advisory, CAS, and our educator development program to be conducted a few times a year to support each other in our growth. While coaching session may look different for different purposes, I'll be sharing key steps involved in a comprehensive coaching conversation so that parts can be extracted to meet the different needs. So let's get started. Step 1. What's going on? Coaching starts by becoming more aware of the issue that a coachee is experiencing. Oftentimes, when someone is stuck, they are caught up in stories, especially in a form of judgments about what's happening. At the beginning of the conversation, it might be important to give time to let your coachee vent and share their stories about the situation. But eventually, it's useful to break the issue to separate the events from the stories they are creating in their head. So as they are sharing their stories, it helps to ask, what actually happened, or what did they do or say, to capture their observations and events. Along with clarifying observations, to better understand what's going on, it's good to find out what their emotional experiences have been and what actions, if any, have been taken in response to the situation. So, for example, you might coach a student. Her name is Susan, who is having trouble with a friend group. When asked what's going on, she might share that one of her friends in the friend group posted pictures of them going out on Instagram, and it was the same day that Susan asked one of them if they were doing anything, and they said no. If Susan is in a survival mode, she'll be stuck in her stories. Let her be there if she needs to, and express any judgments she has about the situation. She may say that the friends are purposefully excluding her, or I'm not fun and cool enough to belong to the group, or I've always tried to fit in but can never be myself around them because I don't feel safe. After letting her share her ideas, it's good to remind her that these are stories she has created. Probe her to find out what actually happened. As a coach, you can help Susan break down the story and separate the events that are observable from her stories. Now, as part of understanding what's going on, you can ask about what feelings she might be experiencing inside. Susan may express that she feels angry for being lied to, or lonely for not belonging, sad that she may not be good enough for her friends. Many of the feelings she experiences will be tied not only to the events, but also to the story she has created, and this is good to become aware of as well. And finally, find out what actions were taken to respond to the situation and see if she was conscious or intentional about the response. So Susan might say, I wanted to inquire, but I didn't say anything because I'm afraid that they will think I'm annoying. Or I'm pretending that everything is okay and trying hard to fit in, but I don't feel like I'm being myself. Now, during this stage, it's important to meet your student or your colleague with empathy. Empathy means to meet your coachee exactly where they are at. So avoid dismissing feelings like don't be sad or there's no need to cry. Accept them for their emotional state. The key is to keep reflecting to check for understanding. This is important to do by asking probing questions or clarifying questions, because sometimes you might find that there are discrepancies in your coachee's story or that they're mixing up events and stories and treating stories as reality. It doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree with your coachee. This is a very important point that many people forget to recognize. You can offer empathy without agreeing with the person. The coaching session is ultimately about your coachee's experience, not yours. You can support them without taking sides. Your coachee might look for you to side with them, but this will only strengthen their stories. As a coach, you can offer understanding, but you don't have to play the game of whose side are you on. Step 2. What might be making you stuck? As a follow-up to finding out what's going on, if it's appropriate, it's useful to help your coachee clarify what's making them stuck. This is especially helpful because sometimes the reason why they're stuck is because they don't know what is making them stuck. For this step, you could ask questions like, what do you not know how to do in this situation? Or why do you think it's so difficult to move forward? What do you think is at the root of the issue? Or what are you afraid of? Or what are your fears? These questions may yield responses such as, I'm afraid of judgment. I'm afraid of wasting my time. I'm afraid of rejection. I'm afraid of not being good enough. Or I'm afraid to fail. Creating the space for your coachee to name their fears and to sit with their feelings of discomfort is important to assure your coachee that whatever they're experiencing is normal. It's good to remind them that feelings of discomfort don't feel great, but they show up for any of us to keep us safe from a perceived threat. By being reminded that the feelings of discomfort are there to protect us, this can help your coachee accept and embrace their emotional experiences more. Now, identifying the areas that your coachee might be stuck in can take quite a bit of skill and will most likely come with practice. As I mentioned before, oftentimes your coachee may not know what's making them stuck, and you might have to extract this from their stories. There are broadly 3 areas where one often gets stuck. These areas are head, heart, and hand. Now, perhaps your coachee is stuck because of head. Is your coachee connecting with multiple perspectives or stuck in one strand of thought? They may be creating stories and getting stuck in their own perspective as though their stories are reality, and not being aware of or being open to hearing other perspectives. Perhaps they are stuck because of heart. Is your coachee lacking motivation? Maybe there are certain feelings like anxiety or fear that's making it hard for them to take the next step or step out of their comfort zone. Perhaps they are stuck because of hand. Does your coachee need help developing a particular skill? Maybe they are willing to do something about their issues, but they don't have the skills to do so. So in the example I gave before, it could be that Susan is having difficulty in the heart, finding it emotionally difficult to confront the friend group because of the fear of being left out. Step 3. What are your hopes and wishes? While finding out what might be getting your student or colleague stuck, it's useful to gauge how open they are in finding ways to move forward. In other words, whether they're in survival or growth mode. We can use what they say, the tone of their voice, and their body posture amongst other cues to gather this information. If they're already in growth mode, then you can engage in this section quite happily. I will share a little later what can be done if they are not in growth mode. So in this step, you might ask questions like, what's most important to you? What do you need? How do you want to experience this relationship, challenge, or situation? What do you think others involved in the situation need or find important? What is worth going for if you could go beyond your fears? Or how do you wish to be? The purpose is to find out what's important for your coachee in the situation. In other words, is to reveal the need that your coachee has that is unmet and that they wish to fulfill or to create moving forward. If the responses to these questions are, I don't know, and they're clearly stuck in survival mode, it can help to physically open them up. You can guide your coachee to sit up, take a breath, and relax their belly and shoulders as they breathe out. Then guide them to take a few deep breaths. The deep breaths can especially help to calm a person down when taken with long exhalations. I usually take exhalations that are twice as long as the inhalations to calm down. The long exhalation works because it turns off the sympathetic nervous system, which is activated in the fight, flight, or freeze response, and in turn switches on the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps us be in a restful state. like after eating a full meal or when one is going to sleep. With this shift in the physical state, one may be more ready to engage with the growth part of the brain and see more opportunities in their situation. Sometimes your coachee might still have trouble shifting to growth mode. In this case, it might make sense to pause the coaching session and take some time for the coachee to engage in activities that can help them make the shift from survival to growth. This can include taking a walk or doing yoga, and this will differ from person to person as everyone has their own way of deactivating the sympathetic system. Once you reconvene, you can go back to the original questions like, what are your hopes and wishes? Or how do you want to experience this relationship? So in the coaching session with Susan, she might respond by saying, I hope to find out if my friends went out without me. I hope to stop pretending and be more myself around my friends. Or I want to feel safe and I want to feel like I'm part of the friend group. Step 4. Why is this important to you? This step is about following up any response that your coachee shared in the previous section with, why is that important to you? What's important when you're asking questions here is to follow up any response that your coachee shares with why. The why questions help to peel the layers to get to the heart of the needs. This probing is key because unless we are super self-aware, we often don't get to the heart of what's important right away. Instead, we dance around what we think is important on a superficial level. By getting to the heart of the matter, we make it possible for our coachee to make fundamental changes that can possibly cure the issue rather than simply bandaging the issue. In my example, Susan might start off by saying that my need is to check with my friends if they went out without me. Then, if probed, why is that important to you? She might say, because I want to know if my friends were lying. Then, if probed, why is that important to you? She might say, well, because I want to be able to trust my friends. This is getting more to the heart of what is important for Susan. With deep probing, we might identify that what is important for Susan is trust, knowing that a friend will not lie, a sense of belonging with her friends, and authenticity, meaning that Susan can feel safe to be herself around her friends. Step 5. What are your options? After identifying what is important, the next step in the coaching process is to come up with ideas for what actions your coachee can take to bring about what is important to them. You can ask them questions like, what are your options? What could you practice next? Or how can I support you? The idea is to encourage your coachee to come up with as many ideas in a short period of time as possible, like at least 10 ideas in 5 minutes, and it is not for you as a coach to provide solutions. This way, your coachee is building their own internal resources. You can guide your coachee by ensuring that the solutions that they're coming up with are not just random solutions, but pertain to the deep-seated needs that were identified in the previous step. Also, with more experience, you can focus your idea generation by looking at what areas your coachee might have been stuck, as in head, heart, and hand, and suggest support that they could use in these specific areas. Notice here that identifying the heart of what's important is critical to coming up with multiple ideas. For instance, in my example, if we didn't get to the heart of what's important for Susan and she was stuck at the layer of, I need to check with my friends if they went out without me, then there is only one possibility for a way forward, which is to check with her friends. However, by getting to the layer of trust and belonging, it opens up multiple paths for fulfilling these needs. So these paths can include sitting with different friends during lunchtime to make other friends who can bring about a sense of belonging, or joining or being more invested in an activity or club that Susan enjoys to create belonging within that club, or asking others what qualities and actions make one trustworthy, and Susan modeling these behaviors to help spread the practice. It's important to clarify also that at this step, While you might encourage your coachee to come up with as many ways as possible to take actions, if they identify that this matter is not that important to them, then they have an option to let it drop. To not take any action is also an action. What is not as useful a step is to let their thoughts spin or get stuck in rumination. This kind of inaction wastes energy. Step 6. What is the next smallest action you will take? After generating many ideas for how your coachee might move forward, the next step is to help them commit to an action to move forward. This is the step that often makes your coachee feel uncomfortable because they actually have to do something. To make it easier for them to be able to take actions, help them break down any large actions into small steps and ask, what is the next smallest action you can take? You might also ask questions like, what will you practice? When can you take this action? What will you feel when the time comes for action? Or how will you overcome the perceived challenge? Now, this is to get to the idea that certain emotions of discomfort will most likely show up when it comes to taking actions, and how they might garner the courage to take the action anyway. Would you like support or follow up to see how things are going? What is important is that the action that they come up with is very specific and observable. So rather than allowing for vague action terms, it's important to encourage specific actions. So vague actions can be like to be more responsible. The specific version of this is to create a Google Calendar for homework and finish it 2 days before due date for feedback. Or another vague action can be to get to know more people. Specific action would be to sit and talk with at least one new person each week during lunch. Notice that the specific actions identify when, as in specific date and time, what actions that are observable, and who will be involved, and if appropriate, where. Believe me, your coachee will get uncomfortable when you press for such detailed commitment. But getting to this specificity is critical to them actually being able to take the next step. Otherwise, no action will most likely be taken. Also, rather than using avoidance actions, it's important to encourage growth actions. The latter is more active than the former. So an example of an avoidance action is to reduce the number of conflicts I have with someone. Whereas the growth action would be to listen actively and to inquire the needs of someone when disagreements arise. Another example of avoidance action is to not be late for classes, whereas growth action would be to set the calendar reminder for every class and to arrive 5 minutes early. Again, going back to my example, rather than Susan saying, I will try to find other friend groups, get her to commit to, I will join the art club and will go to it every week. And while I go to the club, I will sit with a different person every week and talk to them. Step 7. How did it go? The coaching session doesn't finish after one session, but is more of a relationship you build over time. To support your coachee take action, it helps that you check in and show them that you are invested in their growth. So when you see them the next time, you might follow up by saying, so how did it go? Did what you practiced turn into the change that you're looking for? Or would you like to check in again? From the check-in, you might find that your coachee is still stuck or their actions presented a new set of issues, in which case you can offer them another coaching session again. It is sometimes important for your coachee to try out a few different actions to move forward or to stick to their actions for an extended period of time, even though it might have not worked the first time. Remember to remind your coachee that whatever result they get is simply information. It is important to use this information to adjust their paths for moving forward. What this step creates is accountability, And when a person has an accountability partner, they're more likely to follow through on an action as compared to if they were expected to take actions on their own. As we near the end of this presentation, and hopefully you feel motivated to bring coaching into your practice, I want to remind you of effective coaching principles. Firstly, effective coaching is not coach is seen as the expert and coachee is seen as incompetent. Rather, effective coaching is the coach adopts the stance of not knowing, and the coachee is seen as competent and as a co-expert. In that spirit, effective coaching is not telling the coachee what to do, but rather asking questions that both support and challenge the coachee. As a coach, we're not to provide solutions that our coachee should follow, but to draw ideas and thoughts from our coachee so that they can build their internal resources. This is why effective coaching is not being so prepared that you work out all the answers for your coachee before you even hear or observe their challenges. Effective coaching is showing up and being present to another person's experience and listening with both your head and your heart. It is about meeting your coachee exactly where they are at and supporting them to come up with solutions. So effective coaching is not the coach who owns responsibility and choices of goals and actions. As the coachee comes up with their solutions and the coach helps only if necessary, effective coaching is coachee owns responsibility and choice of goals and actions. This means that sometimes, even if you don't agree with their choices, you may have to step back and let your coachee experience possible failures. And lastly, effective coaching is not focused on analyzing problems, but rather is focused on designing possible ways to move forward. I have here on the slide links to useful resources you can use as you bring the practice of coaching into your lives. You can access these links as this slide will be shared with you separately. The first is a coaching template that you can print out and use to guide your coaching session. The second is more on how you can identify what's making your coachee stuck and how to support them effectively. The third is a small read you might be interested in on the link between coaching and mindfulness. So in summary, coaching is a very useful process to support a student or colleague or friend make important changes in their lives. Making meaningful changes takes effort and can be challenging for anyone, so it helps to have someone who is invested in your growth to guide you through the process and keep you accountable. As I mentioned earlier, what I introduced was coaching steps in the most comprehensive form. However, depending on different purposes of coaching, such as coaching for CAS or educator development program, coaching steps need to be modified accordingly, and this will be explained separately. Also, know that a coaching step will rarely be as orderly as step 1, step 2, step 3. Rather, you may jump from step to step in a non-sequential manner, and this will be really messy. But what's important is that you approach it with the intention to support and with effective coaching principles in mind. It's my sincere hope that the tools provided here will be useful to you, and I'm here to support you at any point, so please feel free to reach out. Thank you.